Hey there, today I'm going to give you a basic walkthrough of waveSharp 3, the free image sharpening software. Today I'm going to show you Saturn and Moon's processing. So with no further ado, let's get started. I've got my image opened already in waveSharp 3, and there's lots of new features in this release. And the view you see here is by default the region of interest or ROI view of this Saturn image. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through some of the features here on this top processing tab. And you can see here there's a number of new features in waveSharp 3. There's the ability to have a convolve setting or convolution style. I'm going to check off here the luminance RGB, and you see why in a few moments. In terms of the colors or color base, I'm going to choose OK Lab here. And then the filter I'm going to choose, I'm actually going to go ahead and choose what's called the Z-Gauss filter. And you'll see in a few moments what that does to the image. And then I'm going to check off here the chroma-denoise. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the sharpening levers here. Let's take this to around 100. One thing you'll notice in waveSharp 3 is the range has been increased up to 200. Previous versions only went up to 100. So you can actually do more sharpening if you wish to. And then on this second layer here of sharpening, let's take this to around 50. And the third one, we'll go to around, let's say 25 here. Now, if you look at the image, you can see it's really, really sharpened. And so that's because we've got this Z-Gauss setting here. Now, what I can do is if I go over here and scroll up with my mouse wheel, I'm going to take this to about, let's see here. Let's take it to about 0.5. And you can see here the sharpening has been reduced a little bit by changing this setting here. So let's leave it like this for now. And then the other thing I can do here is you can see here this button that says Estimate Filter. One of the challenges in previous versions of waveSharp and sharpening software is trying to figure out what should the filters setting be. So the developers of waveSharp 3 have done a really nice job here. So if I click on this, you can see that waveSharp is going to go ahead and do an estimate of what the filter setting should be for each of the layers. And you notice up there this button flashing here. So this is the Python program running and gives you kind of a status for each of the layers. And once this is complete, you can see actually the sharpen filter setting has been set for me, which is kind of a nice deal. I can override it by clicking on these buttons here, or I can scroll with the mouse wheel as well. So I'm going to leave it at the estimated filter setting. So it's kind of taken away some of the guesswork for you on setting the filters. Now, the other thing I'm going to do in waveSharp 3 is you notice that if I go in and use the magnifier here, and I'm going to check on and off this chroma-denoise setting. So you can see that there's a very, very subtle change here. However, if I increase this up to around 4, you can see that the filter actually has a very, very subtle effect on the settings here. Now I'm going to increase this factor just a little bit more because it still seems to me like the sharpening is pretty abrupt. And so let's leave that like this for now. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the histogram and work on the histogram settings. Now what I can do in waveSharp 3 is I can actually go ahead, click on Auto Recalc, check ROI, because that's the view that I have right now. And I can go in and automatically set the threshold value. So this is a new thing in waveSharp where you can, again, taking away some of the guesswork on what this threshold value should be for the RGB settings. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to increase the saturation to around 45,000. That's usually around where I go here. And there's also a vibrance setting in waveSharp 3 as well. So it kind of impacts the amount of saturation, if you will, in the histogram. So it's another nice new capability in waveSharp 3. going to go ahead and minimize that. And the next thing I can do is go into the denoise filter. Now, one of the new things in waveSharp 3 is I can actually select which layer is impacted by the denoise. But I can also go in and just select all layers. And again, what waveSharp 3 does is, if I click here, it actually calculates the denoise setting for me. And so that, again, that's taking away some of the guesswork. Now, there's nothing to stop me changing these values here. I can override the estimate, but I'm going to leave it like this for now. And if I toggle on and off here, you can see the impact that it's had on the noise in the image. So let's go ahead and minimize that. So we're making some progress here with waveSharp 3. One of the other things that we can do in waveSharp is we can go ahead and do a de-rind. So this is not a new thing in waveSharp 3, but I'm going to go ahead and do it just for the purpose of this demo. So let me just uncheck this region of interest setting here. And you can see if I go in and magnify again, there's this very subtle rind effect that's taking place on Saturn. And I can go ahead, and what waveSharp 3 will do is if I select this and put in a 0 and then click into the next box here, again, waveSharp 3 has done an estimated setting for me for the edge setting, which is kind of handy. Again, taking away some of the guesswork. And on the de-rind tool, I can select which of the layers are impacted by the de-rind. I'm just going to leave it at layer 1 just for the purpose of this demo. And then if I click on show here, you can see the impact. And again, I'm going to click on Saturn also because I have Saturn. You can see where the de-rind mask is being applied. Now, if I unselect this, you can see that the rinding is really not all the way around the planet. It's kind of, I would say, maybe 3/4 of the way around. So what I can do is, just like in previous versions of waveSharp, I can go in and I'm holding down the shift button and I'm scrolling up on my mouse wheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine where the de-rind mask is being applied. So let's just leave it like this for now, and then unclick show. And if I click on active and deactive, you can see now that the rind effect or de-rind effect is only being applied to this region here. So let's leave it like this for now. What it looks like to me is there's still a little bit of noise in this image. So what I'm going to do is, going back to these filter settings here, I'm actually going to dial back on some of the sharpening effects here. Maybe take it down to about 75 and 35 and about 20. You can see there that the noise is not so high in the image. The other thing that I can do in waveSharp 3 is I can also go ahead and actually bring out the moons that are in this Saturn image. And to do that, I go ahead and click on the background enhancement. And what you'll notice that it's going to do here is I click on active and then click on show. And then there's a setting here that I can actually estimate the edge settings. And then look at that. It actually does this for me automatically. And if I go ahead and uncheck show, you can see what it's doing around the moons here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set some of these settings here. I'm going to increase the cluster setting just a little bit to kind of reduce some of the mask effect, and then maybe take this erode down just a little bit. You can see here, look, now the moons have started to appear. Let's click on uncheck and look at that. So now we can see that the moons have been brought out by this setting. There's one and there's another. So again, another capability. It's not new in waveSharp 3, but that ability to kind of estimate the edge is a nice feature. The other thing I'm going to show you in waveSharp 3 is this curve setting, which is a new feature. I'm going to go ahead and select linear curves. and then I'm going to set it to active, and I'm actually going to take down the dark level just a little smidge here, just so you can see the impact. So if I toggle active on and off, you can see the very subtle impact this curve setting has had. So another nice capability in waveSharp 3. The last thing I'm going to show you in waveSharp 3 is this toolbox icon here. And if I select this, you can see there's some options here, and one of them is a deconvolve tool. So if I click on active and select that, and then I'm going to increase this maybe up to about 8 or 9. And let's just move the zoom back over to the planet. And if I toggle the active and deactive, you can see it's a very, very subtle sharpening effect in the Saturn image. I encourage you to definitely play around with waveSharp 3. I'll put the link to the download in the description of this video. I'm just giving you a very basic overview of the new features. I definitely encourage you to play around with this for yourself. Please subscribe to my channel if you get a chance. And I'll look forward to putting more videos together on waveSharp 3. Thank you.